Last season in Stillwater was all about massive expectations and naturally some bold statements. So far, the D has done more than enough to keep our captivation, while Doug Meacham has now brought in more than enough offensive firepower to at least make us explosive again.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things cowboy and cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at All-Day State. Today, we're partially brought to you by FanDuel. Whether it's a massive game-winning drive or a big upset, the NFL playoffs are always better with FanDuel. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets, guaranteed win or lose. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Meanwhile, we get started in some of the expectations kind of climbing in Stillwater, primarily because of the guys we've brought in on defense that we've already covered several times. The NFL, SEC connections, a lot of these guys date back to the Todd Grantham Florida days in recruiting. So, of course, that's going to build up the fan base for an anticipatory defensive stand in the spring and fall. Offensively, it took Doug Meacham, A, little while to be named the offense coordinator, and B, to bring in some guys that he thinks can build the explosive level a little bit higher again in Stillwater, America. When you're talking about explosivity, I think the first person we should talk about is a dude that has the need for speed, and that is Nebraska wide receiver transfer Jalen Lloyd. Jalen Lloyd played in all 13 games, including a handful of starts over his sophomore and freshman year at Nebraska. He's got almost 600 yards when you combine the two. He's got long TDs of 73 yards, 66 yards, 62 yards. He's a speed dude. And running track at Nebraska, he finished 5th in the long jump in the Big Ten, 7th in the triple jump in the Big Ten championships. He also placed 4th in the outdoors and 12th in the triple jump. Before that, he was a two-sport star that got recruited to play both sports. But one of the biggest things you're going to see in his recruiting is not the names that he turned down, which are extremely impressive, not the teams that offered him in both sports, but it's the fact that guys like Florida and Georgia and Illinois offered him massive track scholarships. In high school, his senior year was cut short, but he was still able to provide 784 yards and 5 touchdowns while being injured for a decent chunk of the season. He was named to a lot of the Nebraska super teams. He was named the 2021-2022 Gatorade Nebraska Track and Field Player Athlete of the Year. And even in the national level, he won the 2022 National Junior Olympic Championship in long jump while finishing 3rd in nationals in the 100-meter, which means he's going to be running a sub 10.5. He's got a 10.43 100-meter on record. This dude is an absolute stud, and he can take the top off of the defense, which is something that we've been missing for a little bit. Of course, whenever you have to fill the void of somebody like a Dejon Stribling, it is going to make sense to get somebody who's an absolute burner that can get down the field and make things happen, even when the defense is kind of prepared for it. This dude is somebody that I do think can take the top off. And he was just named to the Tom Osborne Citizen Championship team at Nebraska. So he does a lot of things off campus that are very relevant to his success on the field as well. This is somebody that we can bring in that's going to be competitive at either the X or the Z. I would say more likely he's going to be at the Z, or the X, but he has the ability to take the top off so much that he might end up playing a Z. Another individual that we've brought in that could have the potential of playing both X or a Z is going to be Shamar Rigby. He was a freshman this previous season at Purdue, 6'3", 190 pounds, coming by way of St. Petersburg, Florida. He was a consensus 3-star recruit, number 73 player ranked in the state of Florida per On 3. He was an all-state honorable mention. He helped his team to a national championship, had 39 receptions for almost 700 yards as a senior, caught 42 passes for 632 yards as a junior with 8 touchdowns as well. He was a stud that got recruited in basketball, averaging over 13 points a game and almost 5 rebounds a game his junior year of high school. Whenever you see what he did at Purdue, the stats aren't going to jump off the page, but he did hit the triple figures. He also scored touchdowns in rushing the ball, receiving. He was a gadget guy that they kind of, mixed around in some of their motions. He also played special teams and has some tackles on special teams as well. But it is very evident that Purdue was trying to find unique, creative ways to get him in the game. But now he's a Cowboy. And this is an individual with that size. He's not going to be quite like, Lloyd. Not a burner per se, but somebody that can high point the ball and do a multitude of things. Speaking of dudes that do a multitude of things, how about Sam Jackson V coming over from Auburn? This dude started his career as a quarterback at TCU, where he does have some rushing yards, he does have some passing yards, he does have some touchdowns, kind of the minor variety, of course. And then he goes to Cal. And at Cal, he was kind of, I would say, very productive as a quarterback. He's thrown for 696 yards, 5 touchdowns, ran for obviously several as well, and then now he's converted to play wide receiver at Auburn. And he still had, 138 yards or something to that effect while he was at Auburn. This dude is yet another individual that Auburn was trying to find creative ways to get on the field. In high school, the dude was able to catch almost 800 yards receiving, and then he threw for 1,400 some odd yards the next season, or 1,700 yards. He was able to kind of be the main receiver for Peyton Thorne in high school. Then he took over at quarterback after Peyton Thorne graduated. So he has versatility that, I'm absolutely in love with. We've got some guys on the defensive side of the ball that did a little bit of both, that played quarterback, that also converted to the defensive side of the ball. This young man was very successful at Cal as a quarterback. He was successful at TCU to some degree as a quarterback. And we didn't really get to see what he could do as a wide receiver at Auburn because he was kind of buried on the depth chart. And he brings in multiple years of availability. Another individual that brings in multiple years of availability that we haven't talked about enough, and that's on me, is OU transfer Caleb Hicks. Now, we're going to talk in a little bit about how this Bedlam switch up is becoming common, and sometimes it makes sense. I think for Caleb Hicks, it definitely made some sense. He had a hard time getting on the field. A whole lot. Now, he did play, and obviously in the recruiting, you see some of the highlights that he had and some of the practice stuff, but he did get on the field at OU. But here's the most important piece of this to me. People talk about recruiting and stars and this and that and the other. I tend to look at some of the offers, and it got down for Caleb Hicks. It was down to Miami, Penn State, Alabama, OU. But he also had offers from South Carolina, obviously Auburn, TCU, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Louisville Tech, Baylor, Colorado, Mizzou, Arizona, Wisconsin, Washington State, SMU, KU. The list literally goes on and on and on and on. He's got multiple pages of offers because he was that highly rated coming out of the Denton, Texas area. And he's kind of a sawed-off Jaylen Warren type of guy at 5'10", 200 pounds. But he also has the speed to kind of make some things happen. There's going to be an emphasis, I think, from Doug Meacham on being able to capitalize on some of the unique abilities that these guys have. This is a quintessential bringing athletes in that have been used either as gadget players or individuals that were very important to the game plan, but maybe didn't get to see the top end of what their production could look like. I am still a firm believer that guys like Gavin Freeman and DeJuan Lofton and Io Shotamide King alongside Cam Hurd with Tyke Andrews, Mason Gilkey. I do firmly believe that the wide receiver room is already pretty squared away. But Doug Meacham obviously said, I want to have more competition. I want to have more speed. I want to have more athleticism. I want to have more versatility. Because now that we know, we just announced we've gotten rid of the fullback position. I don't love it, but it does equal some more offensive innovation that we haven't really seen under Casey Dunn running the show. So Todd Grantham has brought in enough D pieces to keep our captivation level extremely high. And now offensively, we've brought in more than enough as well. My take on the Bedlam back and forth, that's okay, fine. You know what? We'll get there. But first, we got to talk about how to capitalize. We know this already. Capitalization of your monetary gains isn't always hammering the over. Sometimes it's about just watching where everything is going, or rather, watching where the money isn't going. With Rocket Money, it's going to help you find any subscriptions that you've forgotten about or that you're paying for multiple times. It happens to all of us. It's happened to me, right? I've had a few subscriptions that I didn't realize I was paying for. Rocket Money makes it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant with you 24/7 for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, and it helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together all in one place, whether it's your subscriptions, your spending habits, or even just saving up for goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users that has saved a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members an average of $740 a year while using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions, reach your financial goals faster, and know where the money's getting a little funny and the change is getting a little strange with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That is rocketmoney.com/lockedon. One more time, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Go there to know if you've got bills floating around all over the place that you don't need. All right, so we're back in the action again. We get to talk about a little bit of the portal chatter of the Bedlam variety. Of course, you guys have seen that Kendal Daniels has made his way down south to the team we do not speak of, as has Jeff Roberson. Now, we did get Caleb Hicks, Oklahoma running back, as an addition to kind of help in the backfield to go alongside Trent Howland, Sesi Vaialahi, Rodney Fields, Jaden Allen Hendricks. I think we have an equal number of heavy hitters like Trent Howland and Jaden Allen Hendricks, and some guys that can do both like Rodney Fields and Sesi Vaialahi. Then we've got a speed guy that can help take the top off the defense. And now you have to factor in Caleb Hicks to this equation, who has more than enough speed, who ran track in high school as well, who got like a 10.63 100-meter. But the Bedlam portal stuff it's getting a little wild, okay? And some of it makes sense. I was one of the few Cowboys who strongly defended Trace Ford's move to OU because it wasn't so much football related or necessarily the fact that he was rotating with true freshman Colin Oliver for pretty much even snaps. It was more of the medical stuff. And they felt like there was a mismanagement of Trace Ford in Stillwater. And OU, until recently, has been known for their enhanced medical degree programs. Now they're having some issues with, managing injuries, which is kind of ironic. But from that perspective, at that time, it made sense for Trace Ford. It never one time ever made sense for Kelly Maxwell. So we're not going to go on a long diatribe about how preposterous that move was. That was a chicken shiz move by Kelly, who was ring chasing. And then she went to OU and statistically got worse. Now, she did get some of the rings, but she also lost Bedlam, so that was pretty fun. Kelly Maxwell does not apply in the same category as Trace Ford. I do think, however, Kendal Daniels I was going to go on an OU show and talk a little bit about it, but they assumed that I was going to be there to trash Kendal Daniels. I'm not here to trash Kendal Daniels. I think all of us in Cowboy Country would love to see the final version of Kendal Daniels, the version of Kendal Daniels that we all hoped and assumed would potentially get there. The move from safety, obviously a little problematic, but that was an NFL style of move that the scouts wanted to see because that is where they project Kendal Daniels as a linebacker in the NFL. He has the prototypical size, speed, skill to some degree. Now, what you cannot coach is effort, and that is something he did not have in Stillwater America. Another thing you cannot coach, or at least after you've been in this level of football for this number of years, it's hard to improve the IQ side of the game. I think you can find that correlation directly with Alan Bowman. Did he improve a little bit? Maybe, but not enough for it to make a whole lot of sense. Kendal Daniels is much of the same. Kendal Daniels, 6'4", 252 pounds, runs a 4.51, 4.49-ish 40. But his attack angles, to me, are indicative of his lack of football IQ. I think OU might have the capability to increase that. But my question is always going to be, how do you increase effort? And for everyone out there saying that he didn't have effort in Stillwater because of the coaching, that is accurate. But our coaches allowed him to walk and jog and not participate on the field repeatedly, and we kept rewarding him with more playing time and more starts. To me, and maybe somebody correct me if I'm wrong, if he goes to OU and he walks on the field, jogs on the field, lollygags, misses the hole umpteen times, takes the wrong angles, and loses contain umpteen times, he's probably not going to start. So to me, this is a risky move for Kendal Daniels because at Oklahoma State, he was playing, starting no matter what. He could do whatever he wanted, show up however he wanted, play however he wanted, and still get rewarded. I don't think that's going to happen at OU. But I do hope that he finds the love for football again, because if he does, and he can increase his football IQ and make his attack angles much less elementary, he could be an NFL draft pick, and we hope that happens. Now, Jeff Roberson, I think, is a completely other story. Not quite the Kelly Maxwell situation, right? He didn't promise Mike Gundy a whole bunch of stuff. But why would you make this PWO move? Now, even if you were potentially going to be bumped down to a PWO in Stillwater, you have a lot of things in your favor for getting playing time in Stillwater. Going to OU as a PWO, it's a gamble, and it doesn't make any flipping sense. Again, this isn't quite the same thing as Kelly Maxwell, but it's on the same trajectory line. Trace Ford, Kendal Daniels, completely different. Even you could throw Lexi Keys in there. Maybe Lexi Keys had a valiant argument for not wanting to play for Cowgirl basketball anymore. I don't know. But Jeff Roberson, he didn't. Jeff Roberson was going to start as a freshman or true freshman or redshirt freshman, but he was above Kendal Daniels until his ACL. And you could see this previous season, it took him a while to kind of, get everything back in order, to get his feet back underneath him. But as the season progressed, you saw Jeff Roberson kind of get back to the young version of himself. Now, possibly he was told that he would have to compete for a scholarship. But again, the PWO thing doesn't make sense. Because he's good enough, has enough film, and is valued high enough to go get a scholarship at a multitude of places, including Big 12 schools. And probably some SEC schools. And easily some Big 10 schools. Heck, he could have been an All-American in the ACC, but he instead chose to go to OU. It's mind-blowing. And I personally am not the biggest fan of it. I don't love when any OU person switches in almost any sport. Like, I have a large affinity for the number 17. It's the number I wore all the way up to college and into high school. But Gavin Freeman rocking 17 coming from OU was, it took a little bit to get used to. And now Taiwan Ray's gone, so I've got to even embrace it more. But I'm in it. I'm with it. I'm just accentuating the point to me that some of these do not make any sense. And I don't see a massive benefit for Jeff Roberson in making this move. But I do see some of the benefits, and Caleb Hicks, the offensive firepower, definitely gets a little bit of an uptick. And I think a lot of us were a little sad to see A.J. Green go. So this is going to be an important season. Just like it's going to be important for all of us to talk about what the expectations are currently, and are they continuing to get bigger? Last year, we were talking about scholarships and championships and just getting her did all the way across the board. The Cowboys had 20 returning starters, almost 90% of the roster, yada, 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 yada. We should have been in the Big 12 title game, but it equaled one of the worst seasons in the last 30-plus years. This is the time we get to change some things, and Arizona State proved last year you can go from 16 to first in 1 year, no problem. The transfer portal is allowing teams to not really know what they have coming back. The Dion model, I thought, was a bad move, right? Not really bringing in a bunch of high school dudes and primarily bringing in nothing but transfers. But now Oklahoma State is seemingly in a similar position. Now, we're not quite going the Dion mode where we only bring in 7, 8, 9 high school guys. But we went very heavy in the transfer portal, and we did so because these guys have connections with the staff. Now we see on both sides of the ball. Whenever you're factoring in the quarterback competition between Hauss Hejny, Garrett Rangel, Mailuake Smith, and Zane Flores, it is going to be very exciting, which is why I hope we have a spring game So as a fan base, we can all kind of get a decent view of what the quarterback room is going to look like. We have a decent understanding that we have a lot of talent at running back, and Corey Patterson brings in a pedigree of sending dudes to the NFL and producing 1,600, 1,700, 18-yard rushers almost all day, every day. So the expectations there are high. But overall, I think after the season was over, the expectations will probably get back to 6-7 wins, right? Is that fair? Let me know down in the comments section for all of you out on YouTube. Let me know, is 6-7 wins after the season was over viable? That was my expectation. And then we fired all of the coaches. That instantaneously raised the bar and raised the expectations. So now 7 wins, once again, is like the cellar, the absolute basement. And then we bring in the assistant staff, and then we bring in a lot of these heavy hitters on the transfer portal, which we defensively even just got richer. Thank you, Big Ten country, which we'll talk about in some basketball in a later episode. But the expectations, to me, are just steadily climbing. And people had questions and reservations about the quarterback position. Hauss Hejny does answer a lot of those, even if it's just from a depth perspective. So, am I crazy to think that the expectations should now climb from a 7 to 8 win basement and cellar to, dare I say, back to where we're supposed to be, which is 9 to 12 win expectation? Winning 10 games in Stillwater, America under Mike Gundy has been the expectation. You can make the argument, as we have, that the expectations need to climb higher. So should the expectations in 2025, with all of the SEC-style additions that we've brought in and some of the projected draft picks that forego the draft to come to Oklahoma State, with all of that, what are your expectations? Because I feel like mine are now back to 9-10 wins is a must. Getting back to the Big 12 title game should be squarely in the conversation for the end of the season. We should be in the picture every single year for a Big 12 title at the end of the season. And what makes the Big 12 the most fun to watch from a viewership angle is the Big 12's ability to have everybody get knocked off by everybody else. Is that parity good? I think it tests you and gets you ready for the postseason. As Arizona State battled with Texas, I think after that first quarter and even parts of the second quarter, most everybody thought that that was going to be a landslide victory for the Horns. But I do think Arizona State being battle-tested so much is what allowed them to have the absolutely phenomenal second half. But you should be talking about Oklahoma State at the end of every season. Top 3, top 4, worst case scenario, top 5. We should never, ever, now, not a never, be at the bottom of the conference. And I do feel like the expectations postseason were rough. After the coaches got fired, they raised. After all of the new additions, and we're finding out who the staff is going to be behind Todd Grantham and Doug Meacham, it has us believing again. We are believing in Mike Gundy once again. Now, are we going to go as bold as last season? No, probably not. But are we going to weigh heavily on 20 returning starters again? No, we are not. Matter of fact, if we're to throw any caution to anybody in the conference, it's going to be teams like BYU and Arizona State, who now are in a similar situation where they're going to return a significant number of guys from this previous season. Now, I don't think that there's going to be rampant complacency amongst the coaching staff, which equal the same thing amongst all the seniors, which equaled laziness, which equals a 3-9 season, right? I don't think that's going to happen. But if there is a cautionary tale for every team in the country, not just in the Big 12, you need to pay attention to the hunger level amongst the staff and the team. If you get too many dudes that are too comfortable and they're too safe, and the coaches are unwilling to promote the younger guys because the seniority is going to allow the practices to go smoother and the workouts to go smoother, and they're going to hold each other accountable outside of the facilities and make sure that people are doing extra film and extra weights and extra running. That's what you assume when you have 20 returning starters. But unfortunately, if the staff doesn't think they need to do the extra stuff anymore, you're going to have a rough go of it. I think Kenny Dillingham, Marcus Arroyo and company is not going to allow the complacency to creep in to the level that it did in Stillwater, but it is still part of a cautionary tale. But of course, let me know down in the comments section from my YouTube folks, do you think the expectation level is continuing to climb, the more guys that we're bringing in from the portal and the staff? Or am I just kind of love drunk on the orange Kool-Aid right now? Y'all let me know. All right, y'all. So we're going to have this one right here. We've got an episode in the holster to talk a little bit more about some of the new transfers that we're bringing in on the defensive side of the ball. We've got to talk some hoops because the Cowboys not only got a W, but they looked actually impressive in doing so. Cowgirl basketball, we're close to being ranked. We did drop a game that we shouldn't have, but it is what it is. We are where we are, and we're still sitting pretty in basketball. And wrestling, of course. We got a couple guests coming up today and tomorrow and Sunday, so it's going to be pretty filled up once again. I appreciate you. As always, you know I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere, so happy you choose to be here. Like it if you like the daggone thing. Dislike if you don't. That's okay, too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe my podcast with people out there. You're the bricks, the bread, the butter, the fountain, the fondue, the funny stuff. You're all of it. Hit the stars. Leave a review. Do what you do. Later, taters.